Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We're really happy you could join us this afternoon. My name is Brianna Humphreys and I'm the Marketing Manager for K-12 Education Products at Brooks Publishing. Before we start, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items. So you will be muted for the webinar, but if you have any questions during the presentation, be sure to type them into the question box, which should be in your GoToWebinar panel. We'll take questions after the presentation during the Q&A portion of our webinar. For the presentation, you might want to minimize the GoToWebinar bar in your monitor so you can see more of your screen. You can do that by clicking the orange button with the arrow in the top corner of the control bar. If you need to enlarge it again to ask a question, you can just click that same orange button again. If you have any audio issues at any point, you can always switch to phone by clicking the audio section of the webinar panel and using the dial-in information provided. Just a quick note, we are recording today's webinar, so everyone who registered for the event will get a link to the recording in a follow-up email tomorrow. One happy to note thing that I'd like to note is that Brooks is offering a giveaway today. We are raffling 3 copies of Ms. Jen's book, Building Trauma-Sensitive Schools. So winners will be randomly selected from the live attendees, and anyone who wins will be notified after today's webinar. The webinar today is on trauma-sensitive student support during school closures. We are very happy to have Jen Alexander and Ms. Jen here with us today to cover this important topic. As a former special education teacher and a current school counselor in Iowa, Ms. Jen has more than 15 years of experience providing support to young people and the educators who serve them. A popular teacher trainer, trauma expert, and author, Ms. Jen shows fellow educators what works and why when it comes to building trauma-sensitive schools. With a unique ability to connect with students, educators, other helpers, and parents, Ms. Jen is devoted to facilitating school-wide trauma-sensitive transformation through effective professional development paired with school consultation. Ms. Jen holds degrees in psychology and special education teaching, as well as a master's degree in professional school counseling from the University of Northern Iowa. She's also a nationally certified counselor and registered school-based play therapist. Ms. Jen, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to everyone who has joined us. We are very glad you're here. I want to check with you, Brianna. Am I sharing my screen at this point?
Let me see. I currently do not see your slides.
I am pushing the button, but I am not seeing it allow me to share the screen. Do you want to watch that again?
Sure. Let me see. So right underneath your microphone and webinar panel, there should be a third button. Is that what's not working right now?
It says that my third button is now make another attendee the presenter.
Uh-oh. Let's see. Okay, can you try now?
Yes, I think I
perfect.
Got it. So let's get in here, present. Awesome. There we go.
All right, great.
Okay.
Take it away.
Good. All right. Well, again, thank you so much to everybody who's here. I'm very excited to be here, not under these circumstances, obviously, but very glad for the opportunity to connect with you all about how do we help caregivers help kids? Because right now, as educators, we're not having that face-to-face time with our students, which is stressful for them, stressful for us, and just worrisome in light of everything that's happening with this virus. What we're going to talk about today are ways that you can better understand what your students and families might need so that you can help them help one another. That's what today is all about. There is some contact information for me. If you want to follow me on social media, you're welcome to do that, or even to tweet out using my Twitter handle today. If there's something that you learn, I would love to see that on the Twitter feed so that you can share with others what you've learned here today too. I thought we would start with just a little bit of breathing here today, because as I mentioned, and as I think we're all experiencing, this is really stressful. I know in my experiences, as this news started hitting and we went through a school closure, I went into do mode, as many I think people did, and now we're kind of in the swing of it, and a whole different set of emotions have come up for me, and I'm sure that that's been the case for many of us as well, and students and families included. I think some of the novelty is wearing off, and this is just plain hard part of the time at the very least. So what I thought we would start with is I'd bring out one of my glitter jars. I love having these in my office. I luckily have one at home too. And just, I'm wondering if you can identify with this feeling of being mixed up inside, or just things being so chaotic and unpredictable that maybe we don't even know what to feel. So I thought what we would start with are some belly breaths. If you want to put your hands on your belly, you can. If you just want to hold them comfortably in another spot, that's fine too. Let's practice smelling the soup and blowing on the soup. And as we do that, hopefully some of that stress can settle. It's easy to become so overwhelmed in everything that we're doing right now and all the things, the support that we want to provide, to forget to be still, to check in with ourselves and tend to our needs. That's very true for the caregivers we want to support, whether those are parents, grandparents, other caregivers who are taking care of kids right now. We need to check in with ourselves and be still, help ourselves center so that we can be present for one another. Today's goals include these 5 things. We're going to talk a bit about, whoops, I clicked that accidentally, talk a little bit about what is trauma. I'm going to give you my definition of trauma and then help you relate that to what families and all community members, including ourselves, may be experiencing right now during this anxious time. We'll explore youth stress responses that might be typical for different age groups. I'll teach you some supports for children and adolescents that can be particularly helpful in a very simplified way. And then at the end, I'll make sure that you have access to some supportive activities that caregivers can use in the home, but there are also things that you could be using in the school setting, whether that's online learning, remote learning, or even later once we're back in school, that you could use with students yourselves to help support their social, emotional needs. And then we will have time for some questions at the end of our webinar as well. Again, if you'd like to tweet out a takeaway, you're welcome to do that. Please tag me so I can see it. And let's go ahead and get started by talking a little bit about what trauma is. In my book, Building Trauma-Sensitive Schools, I define trauma as a distressing experience or set of experiences that threatens a person's actual safety or perceived sense of felt safety to such a degree that it exceeds an individual's capacity to cope in healthy ways. That's a lot of words. Basically, it means any experience or set of experiences, so it might be more than one, that overwhelms an individual's capacity to cope, to manage that in a healthy way. That could be because the stressor's so big that it's just too much, or it's gone on for too long, or it could be that the social supports are not adequate enough to provide that buffer for the stress that's necessary for all of us, youth included, when we're going through something difficult. In this particular instance, with the stress that we're experiencing now in relation to this virus, we obviously have threats to our safety, to our health, to the health of those we care about. That could potentially be traumatic for kids as well as for us. But we also have the added stress of job loss, financial stress, lack of access to food or shelter for some of our families. And then when we look at the racism that can be happening and the added fears associated with the threats related to immigration status or citizenship status, that can be really increasing stress and causing trauma for individuals right now too. So we're just talking about layers of stress that potentially are too much and can definitely be causing trauma. That's not to say that everybody's being traumatized right now or that every student is going to be traumatized, but we're obviously all experiencing stress and have the potential to reach a point that's too much for any of us. And so what we want to do is talk about how can we acknowledge the experiences, the feelings that will be coming up, and how can we help meet those needs in a way that provides support, that helps soothe the stress response that's happening, that helps kind of take all those experiences and those feelings that are happening and help them settle and calm, so that we're soothing that stress response and helping folks hopefully not be as vulnerable to experiences that are traumatic or responses that end up being traumatic or too much for each person. So it's really about support. And there's so much that we could talk about with this, right? There's so many strategies and essentials that we could be thinking about. And when I teach teachers about this, I talk to them about how relationships really are the evidence-based practice. And within that, we can look at supports that we're doing for an entire school, for all kids. What is our instruction that's happening? How are we building community and a culture of positive relationships that help buffer against stress that may be coming up for folks? But then how do we also teach regulation skills, teach kids the skills that they need to be able to learn? Today, I want to simplify all of those ideas and really kind of boil it down in a way that's easy for everybody to understand. Because when we're stressed, it's hard to take in new information. It's hard to understand things in a new way. So we want to be as simple as we can in how we communicate that with caregivers and with families. So today what we're going to focus on are really two different phrases. We're going to boil everything down to that, because in a trauma-sensitive school, it's all about noticing the need and meeting the need. And as we think about this crisis that we're going through together, I want to help you center that, ground your understanding in these two phrases. I feel, I need. We can think of the I feel as going inward, checking in with ourselves, grounding, being still, and noticing what's happening inside, from our physical reactions to our emotions. And the I need part is really, how do we reach out and communicate what we're needing, ask for what we need, but also help others identify and name what they need, because there's power that comes in naming things. And that's what we're going to work on here today. It really boils down to the fact that we need each other. We need to support each other. That's how we're going to get through this together. So I thought we would start with really checking in with ourselves. I want you to think about, what is it that you feel right now? You can notice your sensations that are happening in your body, the clues that are coming from your body, but also your emotions. And if you want to put that in the comments, you're welcome to do that. You can use words to fit it, like maybe I feel mixed up inside and stressed or anxious, but you could also turn it into a color if you want to. I feel a mix of kind of an orange and a pink color because I feel high stress right now. Whatever it might be for you, go ahead and put that in the comments, and I'm anxious to see what words you can put to what you yourself are feeling right now. I see a lot of stress and anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, scared, unsure and concerned, relieved, lost. Like I'm a learner, right? Confused. This is new for all of us. Worried but hopeful, scattered. Stress and anxiety, lots of confusion and tension, spiraling. Yeah, I get that. Worried, the opposite of stress, solemn, useless, tired. That can go with a shutdown that you might be experiencing. So our feelings can become too much, or they can shut down and become not enough. Those are both stress responses. Wanting to help, feeling sick. I'm sorry if you're not feeling well. Anxious, stretched, grateful, fear of the unknown, overwhelmed. Yes, helpless, absolutely, out of routine, confined, cautious, on guard, worried. Yeah, all of these things make sense. Directionless, not knowing what to do, sometimes frozen and helpless, right? Struggling, blue, unfocused. You are capturing what all people feel when they're feeling a high degree of stress, and potentially what they feel when they're going through trauma or experiencing the after effects of trauma as well. Thank you for sharing about that. As I said, there's power in naming things. And part of what I want to help caregivers do is give children and adolescents the space to name what they feel. We can't necessarily fix it right now, guys, but name it, and being present with one another as we share it is powerful and important that we take the time to do that. So the next question then becomes, I need. So I'm going to invite you to respond in the comments on this one too. You can think about what you need that would help ease some of the stress, and or what you need just to help you cope and feel comforted and soothed as you manage all of the stress that maybe can't even be taken away. But what are some of the things that you need? Go ahead and name that. Whether you can get it or not, it's important to name it. I need routine, schedule, clarity, reassurance, structure. I need to connect. I need safety and family. I need the brakes put on. Oh, I can so relate to that feeling. Just need it to slow down, right? Everything's coming at us so fast, and yet sometimes it's like it's at a standstill because we're not sure what to do, or we're just maybe not able to do something. That can feel very helpless. We need answers, a crystal ball. How is this going to come out? We need a pause to regroup. I need people. I need my people too. I need to remember to breathe. I need this to end. I need community. I need connection. I need to know what the priorities are. I might even need help sorting that out because there's so much coming at us. I need to see my families and my students. I need grace. We all need gentleness and tenderness right now. I need my schedule. I need hope. Yes. Yes. I hope, and part of my intention today is to help give us collectively and help us cultivate hope here together, because I do believe that there's hope when we come together, and we're going to have to be creative about how we do that, because we can't have the face-to-face that we so crave, not just in our hearts and in our minds, but in a physiological way. We crave social connection. We're social beings. That's what our brains and stress response systems need. So while social distancing is critical for our physical health and safety right now, we still need social connection. And so part of the way that Bruce Perry has encouraged us to think about this, at least from a psychological perspective, is that we need physical distancing, which medical professionals call social distancing, but we need social connection. So if we can distinguish between social distancing in terms of the physical distance, but maintain social connection, that's really important. And we're going to talk about that today. And I do believe that as we come together, we're going to find creative ways to do that, to share with each other, to be with each other, to help and support one another. We're going to create hope, and we're going to come out in a new normal with this. We're not going to go back to the way things were. And I hope that we can really evaluate the way things were, especially from an educational perspective, and make some very thoughtful decisions about what we want to try to maintain and keep going, and what we want to change moving forward. Because one thing that I'm seeing come out of this is that while educators have understood for a long time how school communities serve as a hub for our community and for our families in terms of food and getting their needs met, and health care and mental health care, and the list just keeps going on, right? I'm hopeful that as a society, as a collective community, we can now understand that better and plan in a new way moving forward so that everyone gets their needs met in an equitable, inclusive way in our schools. I think that's one of the good things that can eventually come out of this. All right, thanks for sharing about that. So now I want us to start thinking about how can this idea of feelings and needs help us help kids during this crisis. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do is ask youth and encourage caregivers to ask youth about, every time I click to see my slides, I advance them, but to ask them about their feelings and needs. That's the number one place to start. Ask youth, what do you feel? What do you notice in your body? What emotions are there? Name it. And when we name it, as Dr. Daniel Siegel would say, we start to tame it. We start to soothe it. And then ask them and help them tease apart and put language to what is it that they need, and let them know that it's okay to ask for that. What do you feel? What do you need? So everything that we're going to do today in this webinar, the activities I'm going to give you are really just different avenues, different choices that you can make to help caregivers talk about and communicate together about those feelings and needs. One of the activities that I'm going to introduce you to later, and when I give you the links to everything, is this draw a line activity. And so we just practiced naming our feelings in terms of sensations and emotions in the comments, and some of you put a color to it. With children and adolescents, you can take that another step and encourage them to draw a line to show their feelings. They can think of the colors that might go into it. They can think of the shape. There's really no wrong way to do it. And the image that's here is actually from some real kids who did this in the past couple of weeks. Once I started creating these activities, putting things together, I had volunteers who really did this with their own children and adolescents, and then with their permission, including the youth's permission, sent me these photos as part of this project to help you help others. So every picture you're going to see is real from this time period, this crisis with the virus, and these images are shared with permission from youth and their guardians as well. So if you look at the red picture or the red line there, this is from an upper elementary child who said, "My red line is going down because I'm sick and sad. I wish I could feel better." This particular child is not feeling well and expressed that in addition to the emotion of sadness in that line. This is a really simple activity. I'm going to give you a copy of the activity, of the sheet that you can download and print and share with your people, but obviously you can do it on any kind of paper as well. So someone's asking in the questions, what does it say under draw a line? It just says, draw a line to show how you feel, write it about it if you want to. So people could put words to that if they'd like. And I encourage families to have everybody in the family, if they want to draw a line and to share about it, because as adults do that and model, then that gives kids permission to share about their feelings as well. And then from there, you can move into a discussion about what would help you right now. Maybe I can't wave a wand and make you magically feel better, but if you're feeling sick, but what could I do that would bring you comfort or that would at least help you feel a little bit better than you do right now? Several of you are asking if you have permission to use this, and you absolutely do. So everything is up on my blog. You can download anything that you want to, and you can send it out and use it. I just ask that you don't change it and leave my contact information on the bottom. So if people want more information, they can come back and get that. You absolutely have permission to use it. And I have linked all of these activities to the SEL competencies as well. So if you're doing home-based learning, remote learning, whatever you're calling it, and you want to even prepare a packet that you can hand families and use this, just know that you have access to the competencies and how this would link up with SEL learning as well, okay? Often one of the things that I say is I teach caregivers about how to help youth, whether they're going through grief or stress or trauma, is to remind them, and often I need to remind myself of this too, that kids often know what they need if we will get out of the way. So as soon as we open up this opportunity for kids to share in a creative way, especially not just with words, but with colors and shapes, what they're feeling, it can very naturally lead into a conversation about what do you need. And often we can trust many kids to know what they need and that that's going to be helpful to them. And one of the things that you might find is that kids will, whether they're little kids or big kids, they'll talk about this a little bit and then they'll be ready to move on and do something else for a while, whether it's go play or get on a video game or do some schoolwork or read a book or whatever it is. And that's all right. Think of it as kind of taking little bites out of processing what they're going through and what they're experiencing. And we can actually learn a lot from them in that, and can do that ourselves, because as adults, we might sometimes have a tendency to get stuck on thinking about what's stressing us or focus on the news for long periods of time and not take those breaks, or even sometimes feel guilty for taking a break or for enjoying something when that's exactly what our bodies need and our hearts need as well. that can help prevent us from becoming overwhelmed and keep us healthy so that we're not reaching that point of too much stress as much as is possible right now. That will help us remain in a regulated state. And when we're in a regulated state, then we are better able to help children and adolescents have regulation and be regulated as well. Our calm goes a long way in helping them to be calm. All right. So keeping in mind that not every student, not every child or adolescent is going to be able to put into words what they feel and what they need, I also came up with a couple of slides here that I want to share with you, where we're going to go through and kind of look at, if kids could put everything in words, what might they say to us, right? So if kids were going to tell us what they feel, here are some of the things that they might say if they could, okay? And this is really true of children and adolescents, both, including very young kids to big kids. It might look a little bit differently with different age groups, but a lot of these things are similar. Kids might say some of the same things that you said when you described your feelings. They might feel unsafe or scared of this virus. That can become even more pronounced if they're sick, if they're physically not well, whether that's due to COVID-19 or not. Any kind of physical symptoms could potentially increase any of our anxieties right now. If youth have had previous health needs or health conditions, including mental health concerns like anxiety, understandably, this can be kind of increasing those worries that may go with those things. Also, if kids have someone they care about who's been ill, there's been a death, or they've had previous trauma of some kind, we might see even more pronounced feelings of being scared or feeling unsafe. And that can happen too when kids have a healthcare worker who they care about. So knowing that a parent or another caregiver is going to the hospital to care for others, for instance, or to help others, knowing that they're exposed to that virus can then increase their feelings of fear and just being unsafe in general, knowing that that person's being exposed. And of course, that's even just increased even more when we know that healthcare workers are not having the protective equipment that they need right now. So obviously we can't fix that fear for kids. And one of the things that I often encourage folks to understand is that it's very important to tell kids the truth. We don't want to lie to kids just to make them feel better, just like we don't want to be lied to just to be made feel better. That doesn't mean kids need to have every detail of the truth, but not lying to them is really important. So if they see on the news that protective equipment isn't where it needs to be, acknowledging that is important. You're right, kiddo. That's scary to hear about that, isn't it? Here are the things that your caregiver or the person you care about, or and if it's themselves saying it, that I'm doing to help keep myself safe. In light of that, is really important to share as well. All youth, whether they have been exposed or not, or they know someone who's being exposed or not, just like us, are likely feeling big feelings or no feelings. So that kind of extreme of feeling too much or feeling not enough. And some of that comes from just not being able to control the changes that are happening, from loss of school to loss of freedom, not being able to be with friends, teachers, other community members face to face. That's just plain hard. And it's different for us. And those big feelings or not feeling anything at all are really understandable. I do want to talk a little bit about that not feeling much at all, because youth often, this is true for adults as well, but youth often, when there's some kind of a surprise event, like this has come as a surprise for many of us, at least how quickly it has unfolded and changed our lives. It's not uncommon at all for kids to not really feel anything at all. It's almost as if their bodies are in shock and don't know what to feel. And explaining that to youth, acknowledging that, is really important to let them know that they might be seeing other people, whether it's on TV or in their households, who are feeling a lot, crying a lot, expressing worry, and they might be feeling nothing at all. So saying to them, you know, that's a typical thing to feel when we have big changes that we weren't expecting as well, can help them feel less crazy and help them know that there's not something wrong with them. They're not caring about what's happening. Their body is just really not sure what to feel right now. And explaining that could be really helpful. Any of us can feel upset and anxious, and that can be made worse by all the things that we're hearing on the media. Turn that down, unplug. Big chunks of the day, super important for all of us. I am really worried about for districts who are moving to remote learning, home-based learning, online learning, whatever you want to talk about it. I'm worried about equity, first of all. I'm worried about work that's just right for kids, knowing that different kids need different things. But I'm also really worried that we're having kids, including young kids, potentially on screens for long periods of time. That is not good for our bodies. It's not good for our stress response, and it can just increase difficulty with focusing, but also those big reactions or not enough reactions that we might have in response to stress. So it's super important that we get breaks from that. And it's really important that anything as educators that we're asking families to do with kids, that it be optional, that it be flexible, and that we keep in mind that when we're stressed, none of us can process big amounts of information. None of us can handle long lists of resources that we have to comb through to figure out what we're going to do. Keep it simple. Take what you think is best and then probably cut it in half, maybe even cut it in half again, and then offer options. And be sure that you're letting families know that whether it's an academic task or an emotional task, that they get to use their best judgment to decide, is this what we really need right now? And that they're not going to be penalized for saying, no, it's not. What we need is to cuddle. What we need is to connect. We need is to go outside in our own yard and play together. That that's okay for them to make those decisions and to do what is best for them. Also keeping in mind that even if we have families who are not feeling particularly vulnerable at the moment, even more so than, or at least any more so than any of us are, that even parents and caregivers who are working from home are facing increased stress because of those changes and trying to navigate that and use their own devices, and then also might be trying to parent on top of that. And then when we add in the extra vulnerabilities that might come from fear related to citizenship status, fear related to food and shelter insecurities, there's just a wealth of stress that's going around, and we want to do everything we can to support folks and help them feel better, not worse. Kids might be feeling unwell due to the stress, and that can be true for adults too. So things like headaches, muscle tension, butterflies in the tummy, all the kinds of physical complaints might be coming up more, and particularly when this is a health crisis that we're going through, kids might not understand that those are stress responses. So when they start to have an upset tummy, when they get anxious and maybe have more shallow breathing, they might start to think, maybe I had the virus and I'm becoming short of breath, and then their fear might become even bigger. So helping them and just being really explicit in saying, you know, that response that you're feeling right now, it could be because you're sick, but I also know you're worried. And when you feel worried, when any of us feel worried, our bodies respond like that. And so just because you're feeling that doesn't mean you're sick. That would be really important to point out to kids. And then we're going to see mood changes, mood difficulties. We might see more irritability, more boredom. Irritability is a big one for youth, but I think we're going to see it for all of us who are living together. It's hard to be in the same space for a prolonged period of time, anytime, but now we've lost our access to other things, just even to have breaks from one another. We've lost that freedom. And so I think we're going to see irritability go up big time. We're going to see more conflicts with each other. It's just important to just be honest about that and honor the feelings, honor the needs. Really important that we give kids choices as much as possible. And even choices that don't really feel very meaningful right now might be the only choices that they have. And so we absolutely want to give them to them. Do you want to get up at 8:30 or 8:45? Or do you want to sleep till noon if you're a teenager? How do you want to handle your schedule? Asking kids to have input on how you're going to structure the routine of the day is super important. Give them control or they can have it because they've lost a lot of control and a lot of freedom. And as much as being close can feel comforting and necessary for our health as well as our emotions right now, it can also, I'm also worried about how it might stifle development. Kids need to be curious and explore and have freedom, and teenagers especially need to have privacy and an ability to kind of experiment with who they are with their peer group separate from family. And all of that is potentially being stifled right now. So how do you want to do your hair today? What do you want to wear today? Do you want to do your schoolwork now or later? Do you want to do it in this room or that room? Do you want to use your crayons or your markers? Give choices as much as possible and encourage caregivers to give those choices too. Keep in mind that any of these reactions that you might be seeing or that caregivers might be seeing in kids does not necessarily mean that their child is traumatized or not doing well. These are common reactions to the stress that we're all experiencing. If caregivers are starting to see more than 2 or 3 weeks of a very down mood, a highly irritable mood, a big change in anger and aggression and how that's shown or communicated, any comments about threats to harm self or harm others, at that point, it's going to be really important to reach out to a healthcare professional, a mental health professional, seek support and advice about what your child or teen may need in terms of support. Thankfully, there are mental health professionals who are doing telehealth appointments right now. So if that's something that's an option for you, tap into that. We know that it's hard on a good day to access the care that we need, both mental health wise, but also physical health wise. And a lot of that depends on insurance that people have or don't have. So we're also going to need to look at informal supports and make sure that we're offering to caregivers crisis lines. There's now also a number for mental health support that's national and that's free. And so we want to make sure that we're putting that information out there, that we're keeping up to date on the resources in our own communities and how families can access those. I know in our district, we've worked to update a very short as possible, but yet comprehensive list of numbers for support that people can access, making sure it's in their hands and making sure we're staying on top of that, connected with those agencies so we know if their hours have changed, what's the best way to access, how do people do something that maybe they used to do in person, but now they do it online, or what if they don't have access to being online, how can they do that over the phone, things like that. You want to just make things easier for people. The minute we start sending a link and then there's 15 steps that go with it to access something, a family who's stressed is going to have trouble following through with all of those steps. So the more we can simplify that, the more we can say, here's your next step. This will get you a step closer to what you need, the easier it's going to be for everybody. And that helps us help others, help kids. And that's what this is really all about. When we think about what kids need through the process, I've talked a little bit about that already, but I want to highlight a couple of other things too. Especially as we think about, the physical health has been understandably where our focus has been. The mental health crisis is coming. We've already been there in our states across the nation in a mental health crisis. We know that this is not new information, but we add the social isolation and the lack of access and ability to get supports to the inequities that were already present in our society and just in terms of meeting people's basic needs, and we add the isolation to that, we're moving towards a mental health crisis here. And so a lot of the things in terms of what kids might need are about helping you kind of anticipate what's coming so that you can help caregivers help kids as much as possible. When I teach about building trauma sensitive schools, I talk about the 4 essentials, and they come down to, it's really our job to work together to make sure every person in our school community feels safe, is connected, can get regulated, and then learns. And so I'm going to put the things that youth might need under the umbrella of those 4 essentials. So starting with what helps kids to feel safe: be with them, connect with them, put the technology down, be together, and then help them meet their basic needs as much as possible and reassure them about how those needs will be met. And in our world as educators and helpers, helping families know how those needs can be met so then they can offer that reassurance to their kids. We want to tell kids truthful information. Doesn't mean they need to know every detail, so not too much, but telling them the truth. And let kids' questions guide that. So when a child or a teen asks a question, answer that question. You could probably go on and on and on and answer it in more detail, but answer the question they ask. They tend to be very good at asking for what they need and then stopping, and it's okay to let that be your guide. Again, be sure you're telling the truth. Doesn't mean you need to tell all of the truth, but tell the truth. And also pair any of the realities about the virus and how it can make some people sick with, here are the things we can do that can not only help us stay healthy and safe, but they help us help others. And that's the main reason we're staying home, is so that we can help others stay healthy and safe too. Turn that news off and watch your own reaction so that you're not overwhelmed, because kids are they're sponges, they're gonna pick that up. That doesn't mean you have to stop showing all emotion. It's okay for youth to see adults cry, see they're worried. That gives them permission to share that too, but we don't want them to see you overwhelmed, because that's scary. Once in a while, might it happen? Yes, sometimes it can't be helped, but you want to try to manage that as best you can. And bring in other people as well as you can, and even though it's tricky within your support system, to help support kids when you might need a break. And then when you see them becoming overwhelmed, stepping in and doing those things that soothe them and help them. So once we have everybody feeling as safe as possible, we want to focus on connection. And those two really go hand in hand, because for youth, it is our relationships, it is our connections. It's true for us as adults too, that help us feel safe. So connect with kids, spend time with them, listen more than you talk. Let them talk and then you respond. That's really important. Also understand that kids need to connect with their friends and their teachers, so help them do that. We're going to need to be creative about that. Some of that's going to happen on video games. It's going to happen on technology. We might have to pick up the phone and actually go back to having conversations with one another. So think about, how can you foster that, and how can you give kids some privacy around that, because their relationships with peers don't typically have adults breathing down their neck all the time. They have privacy with that. And so how can we give them that will be what they need in terms of their development and their social development and growth, but also their sense of control that they need to feel right now. So once we have focused on safety and connection, how can we help kids get regulated? We're all a little bit different in terms of our needs, and that's important to talk about with kids and with families and within families. Is what one person needs might not match what somebody else needs, and that's okay. So how do we negotiate that? How do we help make sure everybody gets a little bit of what they need, or how do we take turns with that? But this gives us some language to go with that. Always coming back to, what do you feel? What do you need? So provide routine as much as possible. Now, for some families, that might mean a very structured schedule. For others, I don't think that's what's best. I think that's too rigid and too controlling and too much of imposing what school's like when we have to manage large groups of humans to what works in a home setting. Home is not school, and we want people to do home in the way that works for them, because what feels familiar to kids, what's typical for them, is going to be reassuring and help them feel safe, and it's going to be regulating. So we don't want to change home to make it match school. We want to offer some options and suggestions, but then trust that families know what's best for them, and they can take or leave what we offer and make it work for themselves. But we need some kind of a routine that we try to stick to, and for some it might be more, and for others it might be less. We want to help kids with their feelings, to identify them, to name what they feel, but then to help do things that help meet their needs, to help soothe those reactions as well. As part of that, kids need boundaries. So as much as we want to help them have choices, and we want to say yes because we're saying no to so many things all at once, we also want to set boundaries. This is a hard time, and that doesn't mean it's okay to clobber your brother and your sister, okay? So we're gonna have a consequence for that. That helps bring a sense of safety to kids as well. We wanna comfort kids in the ways that work for them, help them make sense of the reactions. We talked about that a little bit. And then have fun together. We don't wanna sit and talk about feelings all the time. Little bits, little bites at a time, and then go back to life and being together. Have fun, play, be creative. have as many hands-on activities as you can. Obviously, there needs to be access to things, and some families have more access than others. If you're doing, as educators, if you're going to do kind of handoff supplies or hard copy activities, one of the things I put on the blog is a list of very simple supplies that you could try to gather and give to families who might need it, from pencils and paper, to crayons, to some Play-Doh, to a jump rope, just things that would help everybody move and create and do some hands-on things, because sensory activities are very regulating and they're just good for development as well. And then music is, of course, really important too. So once we have safety, connection, regulation, we can focus on teaching and learning. And I don't just mean academic learning here, I mean any kind of learning. So if we've had maybe some questions that have come up about the virus and we want to help educate our children a little bit about that, making sure that we're safe, we're connected, everybody's regulated before we have that discussion, before they're going to be able to learn from us, is important to realize. We want to clear up misunderstandings that might be there. We want to help kids learn new things. I'm a big proponent of school right now could look like read a little bit, write in a journal about what your experiences at this time in history, because you're living it. Maybe do a little bit of math in whatever way works for you. And then what do you want to learn about? How can I help you research that? How can I help you read about it? How can I help you have some questions that you want to get answered through your own independent learning? This is a great time for kids to feel in control of their learning, and learn about things that they might not, under other circumstances, be able to learn about. And then do family activities together. Have as much freedom in that as is possible, so kids experience a sense of agency with themselves, or within themselves, I should say. I see in the questions, aren't we all educators right now? Absolutely, we are educators right now, but I don't think that stops parents and grandparents and caregivers from being who they are. They might need to put on their educator hat or their teacher hat a little bit as we do some of these home-based things, whether they're optional or required, depending on your district. But it doesn't take away from the fact that people still need to be parents and caregivers, and that has to come first. All right. I just want to look at the time here. Okay. What we don't need right now is racism. That's very concerning to me, seeing how there, especially early on, but obviously there are other things that are continuing to happen that are racist and that are definitely marginalizing folks who none of us would ever need to be marginalized, and it's nothing that is being helpful right now and can absolutely be causing more trauma. So we want to make sure that if we see that happening, that we're interrupting it, we're standing up for people, and we're saying, I don't agree with that being said, and that was not okay. This is not a Chinese virus. It is not okay to call it that. And we have had real fear and real things happening that are causing trauma for folks and harm to folks based on some of that language that's being used, in addition to the other things that are not equitable and that create hardships. So we just need to know that that's there. And in some ways, I think this experience that we're going through together has kind of shined a light on some of that was already there. And I hope that we can work together to address it in a way that promotes justice for every single person, everyone. So let's get to the activities. And then I want to make sure that we have some time for your questions. So here are the activities that are on the blog. As I told you, things are going to come down to the I feel, I need. Everything is shaped around that. There are a couple of links there for resources that you can use to help kids understand the virus a little bit better. There's a video on there. There's a comic on there. You might have found some other resources as well. Feel free to comment on that blog post too. If there's other things that you're accessing or that you've seen that you think would be helpful to people, add it to the comments, because then we can all benefit from learning from each other. Specifically, there are 5 different I feel, I need activities and conversation prompts that are on the blog. This particular one that's shown on the screen right here was done by a teenager. And while these are really simple, like to talk about feelings and needs, I mean, we did it in the comments and a lot came out. So if that can happen with adults, it can very much happen with teenagers. I don't want you to think these are only activities for young kids. They're also for adolescents. And they can take it where they want to, and they'll do what they need to. And that's the magical part of kids, if you ask me. But this was a teenager who did this collage about feelings and needs. So you could talk about feelings and needs, you could draw about it, but a collage is a really cool way, especially with tweens and teens, to help them express things in a little bit deeper way. So this teenager said on the feelings, I feel worried about having enough money and the elderly who may be sick, but I like to see doctors and nurses helping. Gives them a sense of hope. Gives me that hope too. On the needs side, this person said, I need us to be healthy and help others because that feels good. Teenagers want to contribute. They want to feel a sense of agency. That's part of where they're at in development, recognizing their own power, how they're different from other people, what they can contribute. I think with everybody in families, regardless of age, we need to be talking about what can we do right now? What can we have control over that could help make a positive difference? That action will help move all of us out of anxiety. And I think it's particularly important for adolescents. And the more they can have ownership of what that's going to look like, the better. So if they want to think about organizing a way to raise some money in their community and research what organization they want to give it to, or think about what's a safe way to help neighbors in the neighborhood who may have needs that's honoring the physical distance that we need, but it gives them a chance to reach out and then have some control over that, and some leadership over that can be really helpful for adolescents especially. And that's a lot of what this teen was expressing here in their collage. So everything you need for that, including the directions and links to SEL competencies, is on the website. And you will have access to that link after the webinar as well. Then moving on to some of the other freebies that are there, I gave you directions to make a worry box. This is not my original idea to create a worry box. Counselors and therapists have been doing worry boxes with kids for a very long time, long before I was helping children, I'm sure. But worry boxes are awesome because kids can decorate them in the way that they want to. You can have, each child has their own. You can have one for the family, however you want to do that. And then on any paper, kids write about, draw about a worry that they're having. They can talk about it if they want to, or just fold it up, put it inside the worry box. It's a way to get the worry outside of you and put it somewhere so you're not always having to carry it around. And that physical symbolism that goes with that can be really helpful for youth, really helpful. So I encourage you to think about offering that option to families. I did a video for students at my school just this week and posted it. And I talked a little bit about making a worry box as an option, but I acknowledging that not everybody has a box at home. Not everybody has materials to decorate a box. We want to be inclusive. So one of the things I said was, if you don't have a box, that's all right. Just find a spot to put the worries. That's a place you're going to designate for that. So maybe it's a drawer. Put it in a sock even. Whatever works for you. So that kind of became a fun, put a sock in it or put it in a sock. Getting those worries outside, but anything that works for them would work. And again, let them have some control over it. Other things on the blog, you'll notice, I hope you noticed some of the art that was on these slides. That was a gift to us from Dr. Debbie Donsky. She is a wonderful, brilliant creator, educator, and mom, just a dear heart. And she gave us the gift of her art for this presentation because she wanted to help you help others. And she gave us coloring pages too that you are welcome to download and share with families. I divided them into coloring pages for littles and coloring pages for bigs. But they're very special, and she gave those to us, so I really appreciate that she did that. One of her asks is that if you could tweet out photos or put them in the comments on the blog, she would love to see some of the coloring that's done, and that would be a way that we can reach back to her. Sometimes in this work, when we do things virtually and we give things like this, we don't see that same reaching back that we would see in a classroom when we do something with students and we experience their experience. And so I think if we can do that, if we can leave some comments about how things work, that will be reaching back to me. And if we can leave some photos of coloring with students' permission, of course, she will feel connected to how she's helping you help kids too. Also on the website are a couple of brand new things. So I created an iMessage Connect 4 game. So an iMessage is really a way to use the language of I feel, I need, particularly in the moment when someone's doing something to somebody else that's really bugging them. So you would use an iMessage instead of slugging them or slapping them or screaming or just shutting down and giving up. So if someone grabs the remote, changes the channel, another kid can say, I feel mad that you did that because I didn't get any say in what we're watching. I need you to turn it back and have us talk about this first. I feel, I need. So now we're bringing that language in the moment to help resolve conflicts and problems that come up in a safe way. So with the Connect 4 game, it's just a printout of circles that look like a Connect 4 game. If you actually have the game at home, families can use that instead, but they just practice giving problems, saying iMessages they could use in those situations, and then filling in the Connect 4 game as they play. The next thing on the website is a page where you can use, it's a planning sheet or a plan sheet that youth could use and that caregivers could encourage them to use when they've had a conflict that's really escalated and maybe you've had to separate people. I'm sure that's going to happen a lot as feelings get big and we're tired and irritated with each other. But noticing that dysregulation is happening, separate until people are better regulated, then come back together. The plan sheet is a way for each person to acknowledge what they felt, what they need, but also understand what the other person felt and needed. And then together, and they might need help with this at first, but coming up with some solutions that would help everybody involved to get at least a little bit of what they need. So now we have collaborative problem solving happening using this same language of I feel, I need. Then the last thing on the site is a what went well today reflection. This actually comes from my book, Building Trauma Sensitive Schools. I told you there's so much there about how we can build an entire community, a community school that meets the needs of all students, including those who've experienced trauma and high degrees of stress, which is potentially any of us at any time, depending on circumstances, which is absolutely what we're living right now. There are tons of activities and strategies and just ways to change mindsets that can help utilize MTSS to meet the needs of all kids, as well as all educators. And one of the appendices in the book is a what went well today page. And it's really just a worksheet that you could use as a worksheet. You could just talk about it together to have each person identify what went well today and what was your part in making it go well. What was the action that you took that helped it to go well? Because we're going to need to build on that with each other, especially as these days get long and these weeks go on. And we might be doing this shelter in place for a lot longer than what any of us would hope to do. So those are the activities that are on the blog. On the website, you're welcome to use them now. You can download them later. They're not going anywhere. And yes, you will have access to this webinar later too. We did one little over a week ago, and the recording was up live. There was a little bit of difficulties with the audio. We're hoping we won't have that today. And that way you can access this after the fact, and other people can sign up and log in and access it too. All right, there is the website right there. You can go to msjenalexander.com. That's where you will find the blog post that has all of these activities. Again, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I'm new to Instagram, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. So you're welcome to find me and follow and join me there too. I put out lots of information to help you help kids. That's my passion. As part of this, we have to remember that self-care is essential. We can't tend to others unless we've tended to ourselves. So think of it as inhaling care for self so that you can exhale care for others. One of the things I put up on Twitter just this week was something along the lines of, sometimes we say do what you can and kind of be okay with that, accept that in yourself. I'm actually suggesting to folks right now that you do less than what you can. Because if we push ourselves to that limit of doing all we can, we're depleting our energy at a time when we're already stressed, and we would be much better served, and our community would be much better served if we do a little less than that, keep ourselves less stressed, and that will help our immune system to be tip-top shape so that we can stay healthy and be able to be here to give to others. I would love for you to care for yourself because you matter all on your own, but sometimes that's hard for us. So if we need to think of it as I'm taking care of myself so I can take care of others, I'm cool with that too, because it's going to help you and it's going to help kids too. All right. As Brianna mentioned, Brooks is doing, thankful to them for this, 3 free copies of Building Trauma Sensitive Schools as part of a giveaway. So we will be doing that. Thank you for all the comments that you've posted thus far. We're going to move into questions now and take a few minutes for that. So I'm going to let Brianna kind of guide that with the questions that you think would be best for us to prioritize.
Sure, of course. So thank you so much for a great presentation, Jen. One question that we've gotten a couple times that you've hit on, but I just want to reiterate, people are asking if they do have permission to share the resources from your blogs with colleagues and families.
Yes, you absolutely do. Please don't change them. Please don't erase my website and information that's on the bottom, but you're absolutely able to use those and to send them out to your people, copy them. You have permission for that. They're there for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One question that we've received is if you have any recommendations for how to explain the situation to young children, and if you can provide specific language or strategies for doing so.
You bet. I did that for all of my students at my school last week, and so I've had some practice with that. If we're talking about young kids, I think one of the best ways to explain it is to use what they already know, right? So talk about how they've had times when they've had a virus before, when they've been sick, and that germs, that we can get those from other people, sometimes through the air, sometimes by touching one another. If someone's coughed or sneezed and then we touch our face, and then we end up having that germ and that virus inside us, and it can make us sick too. So explaining to them that this is a virus, there's lots of different kinds of viruses. This particular virus doesn't make everybody really sick, but it could make some people pretty sick. In fact, a lot of people and kids who get it might just feel like they have a cold. They might get a cough, they might feel tired, but they're not going to get super sick or need to go to the hospital. But there are some people who could get really sick. And so the reason that we're staying home is actually to protect them more than it is to protect ourselves. So it's a way that we're being a helper, that we are helping other people by staying home, by washing our hands, so that we're not giving those germs to other people. That's what I have found to be the best way to explain that.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question we've received is if you have any suggestions for early educators and childcare providers who might be struggling with the current social distancing recommendations. People have expressed that a lot of children might want hugs and may require close communication. So I think people are looking for some additional suggestions and tips if you have any.
Absolutely, that's a really good question. First of all, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a scientist, so I want you to follow the recommendations that are coming from your Department of Human Services if you're a child care provider or whatever that might be in your state. Supervisors, what they're telling you, I want you to follow that first and foremost, because keeping everybody safe is the #1 most important thing. I also hope that we can remember that children need touch. And children need to be safe, but they also need their social emotional needs met. They're social beings. They want to connect. They need to connect. They need touch. Thinking that we can keep young children away from each other, more power to you. First of all, if you think you can manage that, I don't know how you would. But I also just want to make sure that kids are getting what they need, and touch is part of that. Now, that's not to minimize caregivers' concerns about that, who are taking care of children right now. While schools are closed, many daycares are open because you are taking care of kids so that their caregivers can continue to work in these essential careers and jobs that we need to keep our communities going. So I don't want to minimize the fears and concerns that you have, because we do know that while young children might not have a lot of symptoms, they can expose us to the virus, and then some of us might become very, very sick. So you matter, your worries about that matter, and I hope that you're asking your supervisors and leaders to help you with that so that we can find some kind of middle ground here. How do we keep you safe and kids safe, and how do we make sure they get what they need? Because not touching children just doesn't seem realistic or healthy to me. But if we can put some barriers there, if you can just always carry a rag with you or something that you kind of put between them and you, and then of course be washing your hands as much as possible and disinfecting and cleaning, that will help keep all of us safe.
Thank you for a great response. Um, Another question we have is about high school students. So we have some questions about the uncertainty surrounding everything that's happening and explaining and talking to students who might be missing key milestones like their prom or walking across stage for graduation. Do you have any recommendations for how to talk to older students?
Absolutely, that's critical. And I think the number one thing we can do is acknowledge how much this stinks. Sometimes we want to just rush in and reassure kids or help them feel better. It's natural as adults to want to do that, but we really discount their feelings and their needs when we do that. So listening to them, how are you really feeling about this? What are you feeling like you're losing out on? And then saying, that really stinks. It's so unfair. I'm sorry that this is happening. I can't imagine what that would be like not to have prom, not to have my last concert, not to have my last whatever sports thing it is. Not to have the opportunity to walk across the stage. This stinks, and I'm really sorry that you're going through this. Just acknowledging it, being together in that, and having space to express the loss that's part of this, because loss is part of this. Loss right now of freedom, loss of those milestones and those experiencing those opportunities, and loss is going to be part of this in terms of death, which is just heartbreaking to think about. But it has been, it is, it's going to continue. And how do we get through grief and loss together? We feel the feels, we feel them. That's how we get through it. We acknowledge the reality of what we're going through, we feel it, and we support each other as we feel it, and we create meaning together eventually out of an accurate memory of what's happening. And we're only going to get that narrative if we're building it together and acknowledging the truth while we're going through it.
That's a really great response. Thank you. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I think I just want to pick one or two more questions if that's okay.
Yes.
So I think an important question that we might want to address is a question we received. If you have any suggestions for communicating with families who might be immigrants or refugees and are experiencing additional fear as a result of the current crisis.
Yes. I can't imagine the layers that some of our families and community members are feeling right now and have been feeling. This is not new for them. These threats are real. So anything we can do to say to them, to acknowledge that, and to just tell them outright that we're safe and we're not going to participate in anything that would put them at risk and cooperate with anything that's going to put them at risk. That we care about them and that we value them and that they have a right to dignity and respect and safety just like every other person, and that we're not just going to do individually caring things. We'll do that and we'll reach out and we'll give support and we'll do what we can, but that we commit to doing more than that together, because individual kindness only goes so far. We need systemic change. We need to work together to stand up and say, this is not okay. Treating people in our nation and in our communities in this manner is not okay. It's not safe. It's not giving them dignity and respect that they deserve and have a right to, and that we're not going to participate in that, and we're going to fight for change. That's what our families need from us, to stand up for them.
Thank you for that, Jen. One additional question that we've received is, what would be your best advice for teachers who are struggling with thoughts of those couple kids that they know aren't getting what they need at home right now emotionally?
That's real too. I am very worried about domestic violence rates, child abuse rates, families who are already vulnerable, already stressed, and now we have all these added stressors on top. Of course, there are risks, and we know that those things, those unsafe things are happening. I think we have to acknowledge that we feel out of control because we are out of control, and there's more that we wish we could do. and that all we're going to be able to do right now is hold space for that, reach out, give support, connect with referrals agencies if we can to get more supports in there if it's possible. But we're not going to be able to control for all of that. And there's going to be heartbreak that's part of this, and we need to be ready for that. And that's part of why we need to take care of ourselves and pace ourselves, because there's going to be work that happens now. There's going to be work that happens as long as we're home, and there's going to be work that happens after. And part of that is going to be, how do we come back together as a school community and deal with the stress and the fear and the anxiety and the possible trauma that's there? And how do we move forward in a way that doesn't leave school being the only support that people in our community have and the kids have? Because when it's not there, like right now, that's not okay. And so we have to do better moving forward.
Thank you for that response. I think we have time for one more question, and then we can wrap up for today. What suggestions do you have for students to connect with their friends from school? And do you have any recommendations for how to share this information with parents too?
Yeah, so I think that email can be a way to get things out to parents. Obviously, not everybody has access to that. So we want to be calling and asking all of our families, how are you accessing information? Do you have internet? Do you have access online? And if not, putting them on a call list. Can I call you? Is there another way? And we might have to do letters and actually deliver them and put them on people's doors, or a packet of information. We have to make sure we get this information to every single family. And I think we're going to need to do that in chunks, right? And I think some of that's probably already happening. So how do we get them information about keeping them safe? How do we get them information about connecting with us and how we connect with them? How do we get them information on helping them regulate, helping support kids with their emotions and stress that's happening, in addition to basic needs? And then eventually, how do we help them get information and access to learning options that are available? But I think we're going to have to be very flexible about that and look at that in different ways. And I think we're learning a lot right now. We're going to make mistakes here as educators. We are on the fly doing this, making this up as we go. We're going to do things that don't work. Be honest about it. Hey, we tried that. That did not work the way that we hoped that it would. We're going to revamp and regroup and do that differently tomorrow. And that process is important to model too, because we're in this together and we're better when we're together. And to answer your question about it and helping kids connect, we're going to have to be creative there too. Video games, online, waving through the window, anything we can do that kids can see each other, FaceTime, calling, but we also have to be really aware of the fact, I've seen some of it happen in our own community, when we even try to do things in a way that honors the physical distancing, as soon as kids get together, as soon as people get together, they just gravitate. So maintaining that 6 feet is really hard. So I also think we have to be really careful about the creative options that we're coming up with, that we're not encouraging people to go beyond what's safe, but finding some creative ways to connect. I think we've got to learn from each other.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jen. I know we have more questions, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so maybe we can follow up with people individually after the webinar.
You bet, absolutely. Just a couple things I want to run by you here. Brooks has also been very gracious to offer a 20% off to all of you on my book and on their website. So just use the code Coffee Talk to get a 20% discount there. A couple other things I want to tell you about. As of right now, I have several trainings coming up. We'll obviously be flexible with those, and the dates might need to move or shift or change depending on our needs. But just know that anybody who signs up for these opportunities now, if the date's canceled, you will obviously and just automatically be able to use that ticket at a future date that works for you, and there will be flexibility around that too. But I'm doing summer trainings this year and actually doing more training in the fall. Training educators is now becoming my full-time job, which I'm super excited about and honored to do this work with you. Now more than ever, I believe that we're going to have a lot of work to do. I believe that we already had that work to do, but I think it's going to be more evident to everybody that the rates of trauma that we have in our schools. And I think as we come back from this, we're going to have to work together to create a new normal. We can't go back to what the way things were, it won't be possible. But I do believe we can create a new normal together, and it's going to take thoughtfulness. It's going to take collaboration, and I'm here to help you with that. So here's some opportunities coming up this summer in Iowa. I will have some trainings, a level 1 and level 2 in Bettendorf, as well as a level 1, 2, and 3 in Cedar Falls. And then I'm also able to come to you, to your community, to your organization, to your school district, anywhere across the country and world, to help you learn how to build trauma-sensitive schools that help everybody, youth and adults included, so that we can feel safe, be connected, get regulated, and learn together. So there is a website on the Brooks webpage that you can go to learn more about that. You can also email me, and I can kind of talk you through what that looks like, what options are available, and know that it can be tailored to the needs of you and your community. There's a little bit more information about the seminars that I can bring to you. And just thank you so much for being you, for doing what you do, for coming here and knowing that we have hurting kids and families who need us to help them and navigate this. I do believe that we will get through this and that we will create hope together. It won't come without loss and without pain and without suffering, but we will create a new normal together, and we will be better together. So thank you for your part in that. I appreciate you.
On behalf of Brooks and everyone here, we just want to thank Ms. Jen so much for being with us today and sharing her knowledge. And thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Take good care, everybody.